Hey guys, Tarke here, and today I want to talk to you about a build that I'm planning to play, which is all thanks to a cool guy in chat showing me the build he is currently playing. So the last video I believe was on Fire Trap and stuff, and I was really curious about how far you could push a pure burning based Fire Trap. And a guy in my chat's like, yo, I'm playing that. Do you want me to show you some gameplay? I'm like, dude, show me some gameplay. So this guy, he's like level 94, he's in Blight Trade League. And he's like, I haven't min-maxed it that much, but it's like kind of come together. It's starting to look kind of good. This is like, it's kind of rough, so don't take it too seriously. But he linked this, and there's a link to his path building down below. So we just did like a big thing yesterday on stream, just like messing around, going through random path of buildings. And what you're looking at is a occultist. And it's just occultist fire trap. And it's all around the dot damage. Now, there are a few mechanical things which are worth clarifying when it comes to how dots work with traps, since there's some confusion. So, the burning ground created by Fire Trap isn't Ignite. It's completely separate. You scale it the same way you scale most Ignite builds, but it's not... It's different. So you could have Ignite plus Fire Trap is basically what I'm trying to say. The Burning Grounds don't stack. They just do one set amount of damage. Now, why is this relevant? Also, the Burning Ground counts as you. So for the sake of any on-death effects, you get all credit from stuff down to Burning Ground, which is kind of important. Why this is important? So it means that if you were to be playing, for example, a straight-up Ignite build or a Righteous Fire build, actually the new Burning Trap is probably your best single target supplement, if you feel like you need it. A lot of people have been doing like Flame Blast, Elementalist Ignite. I saw that Steel's recently doing Armageddon brand Elementalist Ignite. There are a few different Ignite setups out at the moment, and they do like pretty good damage. But this is another thing you could add to an Ignite build, just more supplementary damage on top. Why would you play a pure Fire Trap burning dot build over an Ignite build? Most Ignite builds will have better map clear, since a lot of them can just do like Vol Fireball, map clear, zoom, zoom. But to be fair, you could also do that on this build if you wanted to. One of the annoying things about playing Ignite builds is they get absolutely gutted by the map mod Avoid Ailments. Also, it doesn't matter if you're pure burn-based, you still hit with a fairly sizable initial hit, so you also can't run Reflect. And that can be kind of frustrating. So you right off the bat, you cannot run Ellie Reflect, and you cannot run Avoid Ailments. Now, the good thing about traps is the traps do the damage, not you. So the initial Fire Trap hit can still proc Combustion and stuff, but it doesn't count as you, so you can run Reflect maps. Because the Burning Ground isn't an Ignite, you can also run Avoid Ailment maps. You also have access to a unique pair of gloves called Slave Driver gloves, which can give you blood magic for your trap skills, meaning that you can run no regen maps. So suddenly, if you do a Burning Ground Fire Trap build instead of an Ignite build, you become much more flexible in the fact that you can run whatever map mods you want to run. The clear speed may suffer a little bit, but that's kind of the advantage there. So what are the like disadvantages? Since there are several. So for one, Fire Trap has to be triggered, and you don't really want to be investing that heavily into trap nodes because you want to be investing more into the juicy new fire damage over time nodes. Also, you're just kind of throwing like one trap and then moving, one trap and then moving, one trap and moving. It's not like the traditional trapper build with cluster trap and you throw like 5 at once. So traditional trap-based ascendancies like Saboteur isn't really that good for it. It's just giving you some quality of life. It's not really giving you any of the good stuff. So all of that kind of goes completely out of the window. The way that you trigger traps is you throw the trap to location and then an enemy needs to walk over the trap, or you need to have enough trap trigger AoE that nearby enemies trigger it. So you need to factor in trap throwing speed, which is hard to get, and there's a limited source of it, and you need to get trap trigger, which is also hard to get limited sources of it, but you have the advantage that you can run whatever map mods you want to run. Now, funnily enough, the unique gloves, the Slave Driver gloves, I was talking about earlier, which give you blood magic, they also give you trap throwing speed based on your cast speed. So suddenly, scaling cast speed is really good because it solves one of those problems. And the gloves also give a bunch of AoE, which is handy because having AoE is how you scale Fire Trap. Now, this guy in this video, I believe he has an AoE of 36. I've messed around with a few different path of buildings, and I've managed to bump it up to about 40. If you use the Carcass Jack, you can get it upwards of 44. I think with one particularly wacky setup, I got it up to like 46. But you're looking at like a 40 to 40, just to say, we're looking at like a 40 radius fire trap, which is fairly substantial considering you just throw it once and it covers this massive screen. If you can see here when he triggers the boss, you can see that's like a fairly decent size, and that's like 36. So if you add like a bit more on it. Other things which are good / bad about the way that fire trap works. So if you can, I think the easiest ability to compare fire trap to is Caustic Arrow. Caustic Arrow is an ability I've played a lot of. It's one of my favorite skills. Anyone who's watched me for a long time knows I've played a lot of it. One of the big advantages that fire trap has over Caustic Arrow is it just has a bunch of damage. The new fire trap scaling is really silly. It's also easier to scale, in my opinion, because, and this is another thing which makes fire trap better than typical Ignite builds. Typical Ignite builds you cannot scale with spell damage. But Fire Trap Burn is much like Essence Drain, you can scale it with spell damage. So suddenly you have all of these ways of scaling the ability. You can scale it with area damage, spell damage, trap damage, burning damage, fire damage over time multiplier, and it gets kind of wackadoo. For a long time, I was thinking about doing like a Righteous Fire build using Fire Trap traditional single target, because if you scale RF, it scales all the same things as Fire Trap Burn, and the RF spell damage bonus also scales the Fire Trap. But it seemed kind of unnecessary, and I ended up scrapping that idea, but you could do that if you wanted to. A lot of the Caustic Arrow builds, they end up shifted. They route one of two ways. They either route up from Shadow into Witch, and they get like Jewel Curse, and they get all the Chaos damage over time stuff that way. Or they shuffle far right, and they float around like Shadow Ranger, mostly, and they pick up all the projectile scaling. Which is handy, but you end up on a fairly limited setup, because it's kind of like you've really got only these two options. Because you've got so many more ways of scaling this, you can travel the tree a lot more freely, and it's also much easier to level. Since it's a lot easier to just get random plus level gear when you can use plus level chests, plus level wands, plus level staffs, plus level bows, whereas to get plus level on Caustic Arrow, you only have bows for Caustic Arrow, so you have more weapon options, which is nice. And the other thing which makes this particularly cool is with 3.8, we have all these new global plus fire damage things. So you can suddenly scale all sorts of crazy setups. You can scale up your Fire Trap. If you go for like multiple Ignite setups, you could do like Fire Trap, Flame Blast, or Fire Trap, Fireball, maybe a Scorching Ray in there. And obviously the final thing which makes this so juicy is Skitterbots. Skitterbots is really good. Skitterbots is really sexy. So let's show you kind of the tree that I came up with now that we've gotten all of that out of the way of why you would maybe want to play this build. Ding dong doo, skiboop. Let's show you this. Let me just get it up real quick. There you go. So, with everything in mind, I decided, after looking at a few different setups, so his version wasn't actually running a Searing Touch. I believe he had just under 1 million DPS. I think it was like 900k if I remember correctly, if I started warping it and everything. You can see I actually got the A radius up to 48. That's because he was an occultist, so he was forced in taking Forbidden Power. So I was like, well, if you shove a staff on there, take staff AoE, then you get like all the power charges. You can get like really dumb AoE, but then you've got the issue of like points. Points on the tree is something of a concern. But you can get silly stuff, so that's something you could consider. But anyway, I thought that Trickster made a lot of sense. So the reason why Trickster made a lot of sense to me is the burn from Fire Trap has a very short duration. It only has a 1.7 duration. Caustic Arrow has a 2-second base duration. I always really enjoyed taking the increased duration clusters to make the playstyle feel more smooth. And Trickster gets a bunch of skill effect duration on it. Because the Burning Ground counts as you, Patient Reaper procs. So the life gain on kill, the ES on kill, the mana on kill, that all procs. So that's all really solid. You get all the increased recovery. You get loads of cast speed. Cast speed is great if you're using these Slave Drivers gloves we were talking about earlier, which has 20% reduced trap throwing speed on there, skills which throw traps of blood magic, 20% AoE, and then increases and reductions to cast speed also apply to traps throwing speed, and they also give you endurance, frenzy, and power charge generation, which is really nice. Now, obviously, you already have frenzy and power charge generation on kill, but this gives you frenzy and power charge generation on single target sustain. It also gives you a way to generate endurance charges, which is very nice. And yeah, we managed to get the numbers up to 1.6 million under realistic conditions. And I'll show you the skill setup using just the Searing Touch, which isn't very good. Now, the reason why I'm using a Searing Touch is I'm in SSF and I have a Searing Touch. If you were to get like a GG weapon, like a crazy plus level weapon with a bunch of damage over time multiplier on it, this is like tier 2 damage over time multiplier and tier 2 burning damage on there. You can get better weapons than this. You're pushing like 2.2 million. And this isn't considering the shock from Skitterbots. The reason why it isn't considering the shock from Skitterbots is Path of Building calculates shock at 50%, and Skitterbots are something like 25 or 28% once they get some quality. So it's more like half of the shock bonus, roughly, or something like that. But yeah, so it's pretty cool. What have we got gear-wise on here? So let's go back to the Searing Touch. So it's basically like 2 million with the shock from Skitterbots. Just a Searing Touch. No Helm enchant. For whatever reason, I think I'm just not being very intelligent. I couldn't get the Fossil Craft working, so the damage is higher than that. Carcass Jack, you could use a Carcass Jack or you could use a Combs. Those would really be the main two. They both give a bunch of damage, and one gives a bunch of life, pushing up to like 7.5k life. The other one gives you a bunch of AoE, just depends what you'd rather have. For boots, I just went life. I went really basic life on everything. You could scale a bunch of damage on here. More ways of scaling damage. You could craft AoE, radius, and damage on a helmet. There's non-Val skills do up to 50% more damage. It's either 50 or 60% more damage you can craft on boots. You can get spell damage, you can get fire damage on amulets. None of that is there. I just went for life and a bunch of strength because you would want one big strength item. I just went for life, percent life. I was basically just trying to work out what my values would be. Rings, but you could also get spell damage, fire damage. You can't get trap damage. Yeah, so you get spell damage, fire damage on rings. You could also use opal rings. And then on belts, the reason why it says 24% trap throwing speed, there's a new essence, which gives trap and mine throwing speed. You can craft that on a belt and then use the crafting bench to then craft an additional 12% trap throwing speed on top. So you can get like 24% trap throwing speed quite easily, which is pretty cool. For Abyssal Jewels, you could look for something sort of like this. So just like flat life, damage over time with a two-handed weapon, since we'd be using staffs in the setup, and then chance to gain onslaught on kill. Another very nice thing about the traps, the burning ground counts as you, so you get those on kill effects that we talked about earlier. For more DPS, you can run a Cinder Swallow, which pumps up the numbers. You can also run a Sulfur, but I didn't want to calculate with Flask up, so we turned that all off. One item that I think would be really cool, but I can't get my hands on, are the Blight Boots. The Blight Boots set your movement speed to 150%, and they let you anoint a node on the tree. So you would, if you use those boots, you would anoint like Heart of the Warrior, so you get 10% max life and some flat life and a little bit of strength. The reason why those boots are cool is trappers never have that much movement speed. Generally speaking, unless you're doing like Queen of the Forest shenanigans, they usually like cap out between like 130 to like 180% movement speed-ish, unless you start using Bisco's Leash or Inspired Learnings or Headhunters and stuff. So by using that pair of boots, you open up both your Quicksilver and your Silver Flask slot to be whatever you want it to be. And it means you have a very set, stable movement speed. Another thing which is quite interesting about those boots, I was talking to Octavian about it, is they still get scaled by animation speed. So you can still scale that 150% up by either being a Deadeye or using the Gull Helmet. The Gull Helmet is also a pretty cool option for this build, and because the Burning Ground counts as you, you can actually use the Gull in this build, which I like, because I really like the Gull. It's one of my favorite items. For normal jewels, you're looking for something kind of like fire damage over time multiplier, percent life, and then either trap throwing speed, fire damage, spell damage, damage over time, spell damage with two-handed weapon, spell damage with staffs, all of that kind of stuff. So let's get into the links and all of that stuff. So, you're seeing in power level 4, the Empower level 4 is actually a DPS downgrade. You would use Empower level 4 over Control Destruction, because it gives +2 radius, but you don't have to use that. You could just use Control Destruction instead, which is actually slightly more damage. So, yeah, but if you had an Empower level 4, you'd use it just the +2 AoE. You'd want Fire Trap, Efficacy. Efficacy is great because it gives some skill effect duration, and it scales with the spell damage and the damage over time. Really, really nice. Control Destruction, doesn't matter that it lowers the crit chance because we're not proccing Ellie Overload with the Fire Trap, we're proccing that with something else, which I'll get into later. Trap and Mine damage, just a big multiplier. It does have the reduced trap throwing speed, which sucks, so you could swap it out for something else, but it's there. Combustion to lower enemy resistances. Burning damage to scale the burn, and then Empower for the AoE. I am running a 4-link Scorching Ray. You don't have to run it. The thing which is nice about running the 4-link Scorching Ray is it gives you Infused Channeling, and it gives you the Exposure effect. And since this build has quite a lot of skill effect duration, because it has skill effect duration on the tree, skill effect duration over here, and you could just run like increased duration efficacy on it, it's something you would just like press it just before a boss fight, so you get the buff up, and then the buff would last for ages. Or you can throw your trap, hold it for a few seconds, and then you're chilling. You just need to get the buff, basically. Get the buff, debuff the enemy, that's it. You're not holding it down for the full DPS, it's just like, hold it down for 1.7 seconds, or whatever it is, to get the buff, then that's that. In terms of auras, Enlighten, you don't need Enlighten level 4. I just put that in there. You don't even need Enlighten, period. You could stop that, but let's just say Enlighten. Summon Skitterbots, Flesh and Stone. Flesh and Stone purely for the defense. If you don't want to run Flesh and Stone, you could run an Aspect of the Spider, if you had Aspects of the Spider. And Herald of Ash. If you had a couple more points on the tree, you could run a Malevolence. And Malevolence would be a bunch more DPS scaling. And with a level 4 Enlighten, I believe you can run a Malevolence, yes. And it doesn't matter that you only have 33 mana left unreserved, because you have Blood Magic on your traps. The Scorching Ray is just there for the buffs. You could shove Blood Magic on those links very easily. And your movement swords don't cost any mana, because you're a Trickster, so that's good. The way you proc your Arcane Surge is just with a Steel Skin that you press every couple of seconds. So as long as you have enough mana to press Steel Skin once, you're completely fine. So that's pretty cool. So that's what you can do if you have the Enlighten level 4. Most people won't have the Enlighten level 4, so you won't run it. But that pumps the damage up even higher. Because obviously it's pretty good because it gives much more damage. It also lets you use the Watcher's Eye, which then scales it even further. Smoke Mine for the movement speed and the movement. Then Steel Skin, Arcane Surge, Increased Duration. This isn't using any Vile Righteous Fire, which is nothing you could do to bump the numbers higher. And then a Stormbrand or Orb of Storms, whichever you prefer. Curse on hit, Flammability, Crit Strikes to increase the uptime. If you don't like manually pressing that stuff, you could shove it on a Castle Damage Taken. And this is 4-link Gloves, 4-link Boots, 4-link Helmet, 4-link Chest. This isn't counting having 2 6-links. The reason why I did this is if you want to use the combs, obviously you're dropping something from your setup. But yeah, it actually looks really solid. Other options I thought about doing, I did think about maybe doing something with Hierophant. Hierophant is super, super underappreciated because Pursuit of Faith, people don't appreciate how good this is. So 6% increased damage per enemy killed by you or your totems. There isn't a cap on this, especially considering with Blight you're killing so many monsters. If you kill 50 monsters in the last 4 seconds, this is 300% increased damage. 300% increased damage is a lot of damage. Really, really good. Other things which is kind of cool about it is if you do the pure Mind of a Matter route, you don't run a bunch of auras, you can get up to 125% increased AoE. Or if you don't want to do that, you can drop this. You can take Sign of Purpose and you just gain 10% more damage when you press your Stormbrand Curse on hit setup, which is pretty cool. You can also get some charge reduction stuff. So that's one way of building the tree. But this is what I'm going for. And the way you're proccing the Ellie Overload, the Ellie Overload and the Ellie Equilibrium is again with a Stormbrand or an Orb of Storms. We don't use Wave of Conviction because that would fuck up our EE. And the justification for the runes on the tree, we just went for a decent amount of life, as much AoE as possible, and it's actually fairly neat. This also has quite a lot of regen, which is quite cool. So this build has, you would like to anoint this node because it's very cheap to anoint. 1, 2, 3, 5.8% regen, which then gets scaled up by Patient Reaper, so you have very nice sustain. Yeah, it just sort of works. One thing, since someone's going to ask, but Tarke, you don't take the most important trap node, Clever Construction. Traps can't be damaged. Isn't that, like, really important? No. The reason why it's not important, when you throw a trap through the air, it cannot be damaged. Traps can only be damaged once they land on the floor and then they arm. But the thing is you throw the trap, cannot be damaged, hits the floor, cannot be damaged, it arms, then it can be damaged, but by the time it's armed, it's triggered. So as long as you're throwing it at mobs, you're fine. If you were like, no, you desperately need it, the build is bricked without it, you could just anoint it. And, yeah, as PS, since there's no really mandatory anoints. Cheap anoints, Arsonist is great. Divine Judgment is great as well. That has increased damage on there, and some damage over time multiplier, which is very nice. As I mentioned, Clever Construction is pretty good. Unstable Munitions if you want more AoE, and you want some more Trap Trigger AoE if you're struggling. Master Sapper if you're doing this as a non-trickster, and you don't have the gloves and you want Frenzy Generation. Another very good option. Gives you some Trap Trigger AoE, which is quality of life, some trap damage, and then chance to gain Frenzy Charges. Having more additional traps doesn't matter, because again, the traps don't stack. And yeah, I'm pretty sure this is what I'm going to be playing next. It seems pretty cool. It seems fairly well-rounded. We've got some good defenses through having a decent EH people. We have big blinds with big AoE, because we have so much AoE scaling. Our Flesh and Stone will cover a bunch of the screen. It's incredibly mobile, since you can just throw a trap and run around. You don't have to ever stand still, which is very nice. A lot of builds struggle when they have to, like, stand. This build can always be on the move. It's also very nice for Blight maps, because you just scale these massive, long, big AoE duration fire trap, burning grounds. You can just throw a bunch of them and chill. You can throw, run, upgrade your towers, no concerns. Proximity shield, doesn't matter. Any map mod. So yeah. I'm Tarke. That is a cat. This is the build. Thank you to the beautiful occultist man in chat who has very kindly linked me his YouTube video. I will leave a link to that YouTube video with his path of building set up down below. Everything will be linked, including a link to this path of building. And I'm going to start leveling this. I hope you all have a wonderful day. And by the way, next Thursday through till Monday, from the 26th to the 30th, I won't exist. One of my girlfriend's friends is having a wedding. When I say one of my girlfriend's friends, I mean one of the friends of my girlfriend, not one of my many girlfriend's friends. Just to clarify. They're having a wedding, so I'm flying to Ireland for 4 days for a wedding. So I won't exist for those days, and then when I'm back, I'll then continue to exist. So if you're like, why isn't Tarke been on Twitch or YouTube for that period of time? It's because I didn't exist in a... I'm rambling. I'm Tarke, cat. Bye-bye.